Hello and welcome to another Wolftime gaming video. Today I'm going back to Star Wars Legion and showing you how I painted Commander Rex. That's right, we've scrapped Captain Rex and we've gone straight for the 3/32 version of him as Commander Rex when toward the end of the Clone Wars. Before we get started, as usual, let's get that kettle on. Okay, so unfortunately I lost some of the footage of this, but the start of the video is exactly the same as painting Captain Vaughn that we did a few months ago now. But essentially the way to go forward with starting the actual paint scheme, getting that white down, is a really good base coat of Games Workshop's Grey Seer. It's absolutely fantastic, looks great on the model, and you can see the details straight away before you even start painting. The next thing is to actually get a little bit of shading on the white, and this can be quite difficult. I'm using a contrast paint called Apothecary White. Now it's really easy to use, and you just drop it onto the mini straight away, sinks straight into the recesses and looks fantastic. I'm then going around the model and I'm highlighting the edges of all the armour, as you can see here, by a dry brushing method. All you do is wipe a load of the paint off your brush, nice big wide bristle brush, and then just go around the model, catching all of those raised areas with a bright white paint. Doesn't really matter what white paint you use, just any white paint, and what it does, it adds so much detail to the model. To then go into all those little recessed areas between the gaps in the armour, essentially. There's a bit around the groin, around the backs and fronts of the knees, into the shoulders. There's a little bit of detailing just on the front, sort of around the ab area. I'm just adding a little bit of black paint. It's all the black paint essentially I'm using is the contrast Black Templar from Games Workshop. It's fantastic and drops in really nicely, especially when you want to do detailing around the helmet there. And now we're going back to the Captain Rex himself, and you can see he's looking pretty sweet now. He's looking pretty fantastic. And I'm starting off with the sort of skirt that he wears around his waist. I'm sure you're all screaming at me because it's not a skirt. If my son was here, he'd probably be doing exactly the same thing, but I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. But essentially I'm doing that with the exact same paint. I'm using that contrast Black Templar, and I'm dropping that on there really nicely because you've got sort of a dark grey black sort of theme in the Clone Wars, and I thought that was the best paint to use for it. Just around all the straps holding that on, and there's a few little bits and pieces around the model. I'm going with another contrast paint, this time a grey one called Basilicum Grey. Now this works absolutely fantastically because you don't have to highlight it as you would normally do with normal sort of grey paint, and you can just drop it on there and it drops into the recesses really nicely, and especially around the top, around his shoulders and things, it starts to look really good. Now the blue I'm using is Macragge blue. It's a Games Workshop one that you paint those Ultramarines with. That's their sort of base coat really, or used to be their sort of base coat, but it's a really nice blue to start with. And you could drop that onto all the sort of areas around the model. If you get some reference images of Captain Rex or Commander Rex as we're painting on this one, you'll see that it's a very close match to the blue of that that sort of 501st blue, and it works really well on this model as well. Do make sure you're not going straight out the pot with this one, because it's not a contrast paint. You do want to make sure that you sort of water it, use a palette, add a little bit of water on there as well, and it does make the paint go on the model nice and thinly, so you don't lose any of that all important detail. Just on the arms, you can see I've done some stripes down the arms. Really do take your time if you do this one, and just on the hands there you can see as well. I've just used a very small tip brush, and just be very careful with that one just to add it on. Now this is where it gets a little bit tricky around the helmet. You'll remember from when we painted some of these 3/32 in the past and Captain Vaughn, we started with the Jacaro orange. It's a really nice orange base base paint from Games Workshop again, matches pretty much spot on to what we saw on the 332nd, and it looks really good. Now I'll just paint the whole of the front of the helmet, and it's adding the detail that really does take the time. And I'll grab some of that white paint again. I'm just using Games Workshop White Scar and this very fine tip brush just to actually get it on there. You don't need a small brush for that. Don't get mistaken with small brushes and fine tip brushes. They're very different. You can get a long bristled brush as long as it's got a fine tip on there, just so you can catch the really small details just on the helmet. You got to remember these are quite small. If you're struggling with this part, even just draw like an L shape or anything like that. Really, you don't have to try and get it as accurate as I do. I try and stay pretty much screen accurate with it, and try and capture what we see on the screen, but you don't necessarily need to do that. Just a little bit of white on there will make it work well. Remember, you are standing 3 foot away from these guys on the when you've got them on the table, so it's not like you notice these tiny details. Just to highlight the blue, you can see I've been doing that for a few minutes now, using Calgar blue. Just around the edges essentially. All I'm doing is grabbing a little bit of paint on the brush and then just using the side of the brush just to try and capture those raised areas, and it all works really well. And now I'm doing exactly the same technique, you can see here, with a little bit of silver paint, and I'm using lead belcher just on the weapons on Commander Rex's weapons himself. Just got a little bit of paint on the brush there. You don't want a big globule of paint on there, just a little bit of paint just on the brush, and then just catch those raised areas. So essentially it keeps the darkness of the weapon, that sort of black and silver look that you get in the Clone Wars series. Now basing wise is completely up to you really. I'm going with sort of an Umbara theme for the 332nd, so I'm starting with this dark grey paint called Mechanica Standard Grey from Games Workshop again, and all I'm doing is dropping it straight over the top of some fine sand that I've got from you can pick this up from anywhere. I grabbed it from a hobby shop because it's nice and easy to get this sort of sand from a little bag. You just PVA glue that onto the base, leave it for a good few hours, and then drop the paint straight over the top. And just to highlight that as well, I grabbed a bit of Administratum Grey. You can see I'm just using that dry brush again that we did earlier, with the white around the armour, and all I'm doing is catching the top of all those little raised areas just on the base. And what it does is add a little bit of depth to the actual texture, and so you haven't got just one big block of colour, and it adds that sort of fake depth sort of thing that you've got there. Now I'm using this Alien Neon tufts from a company called Gamers Grass, and they're absolutely fantastic. They really do work from Umbara. You can see this sort of blue base with a really bright pink. They do some like fire grass as well that I think look absolutely fantastic, and I'm using those for the sort of red and white clones that we've got, and the droid army as well has got the different type. But these are great. They're perfect for this, and I mean essentially that's your model complete. You can see that took there wasn't a lot of effort really needed. Probably the biggest sort of areas that you really need to concentrate on is that white. If you go over any of the white areas when painting the rest of the model, it can be a bit of a pain to try and fix. But don't worry, just grab your white scar and touch that up, and then drop a little bit of the contrast paint back over the top, and it kind of all blends together. The helmet looks absolutely fantastic, and I think Commander Rex is going to look great on the tabletop leading the forces. But thanks for watching, guys. I really do hope you like that video. Make sure you do hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the future ones. Got loads of Star Wars Legion videos out there, Star Wars Armada, Warhammer 40k. There's so many videos that we're working on at the minute. Might even have some Blood Bowl coming up as well. And let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one.